Good morning, Rotary Club of Centennial. Good morning. How's everybody doing today? Good. All right. Doug?
Well, when I got the assignment to do the inspirational thing, I gave a lot of thought to what had inspired me over the years. And what I finally netted out was what I've been inspired by as much as anything is the story of people who had a series of failures and still managed to succeed. So I have two quick stories of those people. The first is a guy that went in the military, didn't do very well. So he went back to his little town and he ran for the state senate and failed. But he hung in there, and 2 years later he ran for national office, and he finally succeeded as our 16th president of the United States, Abraham Lincoln. The second is the story of a guy who went through many years of political failure. He was defeated in almost every election he ran for public office. He finally became Prime Minister of Britain at the ripe old age of 62. He was one of the most important figures of World War II. His name was Winston Churchill. And those are the kind of stories that have always inspired me.
Thanks, Doug. Samantha? To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have a Rotary Minute by Don Shattuck.
As if we haven't heard enough about the Supreme Court over the last 3 weeks, May 4th, 1987 is a date that forever changed Rotary, and changed Rotary much to the better. Rotary used to prevent women from being members of Rotary International. And the Rotary Club of Duarte, California, inducted some women. Rotary International found out about it, withdrew the charter, and so the Rotary Club and two of the women who had been disenfranchised by this filed suit under a California law called the Unruh Act. They lost at the state district court. They won their appeal at the California Court of Appeals, and then it went to the Supreme Court. And in a 7-0 decision, the Supreme Court upheld the California Court of Appeals decision that women were entitled to be members of Rotary International. Henceforth, we have women, and all other service clubs have women in them as a result.
That was a good thing at the court.
It was.
Kent, do you have a business minute for us?
I'll make this really brief today. For those of you that don't know, I'm employed by A&B Bank. We are in Cherry Creek. We have 32 branches, almost 33. Our 33rd will be open here shortly. We are, let's see, we're not very big in the Denver area. There's our bank. We have one downtown. We have one in Castle Rock. Most of our branches are in Wyoming and in western Colorado mountain area. We specialize primarily in commercial real estate, but we do everything. We do C&I lending. And that's basically what I do for the bank, is I underwrite, I assess risk for the bank, both for primarily I handle the energy loans. I also do commercial and industrial. I think I said C&I. I should forget that that's an acronym we use. But it's commercial industrial loans. That's the business loans that we give to business people like yourselves. And some commercial real estate loans. But most of mine are the business loans, the lines of credit, and the energy loans. So I'm not sure what else I can tell you about it. I've been there, I'll be there almost 4 years in December, and I enjoy working for them. I hope to retire there. Of course, that isn't going to be too much farther, but I am looking forward to that. So anyway, that's the Business Minute.
Thank you, Kent. And I want to say thank you to Kevin McAsee for braving the early morning traffic and the rain and the cold and everything else to come in here and help set up. And Alan and Paul Horiyuchi are going to take down, so thank you guys. And Cheryl Mabry, I feel very well greeted this morning, so thank you very much. Doug, thanks for that inspiration. It's nice to hear stories like that every once in a while just to refresh your memory, especially if you're having a bad day. And Samantha, that was the best pledge I've ever heard. All right, we do have some visiting Rotarians today. One of them you guys probably know pretty well, Ralph Ogden. He's from our DTC branch. Would you stand up, Ralph? And Ralph brought a distinguished guest with him from the Meru Rotary Club out of Kenya, Kara Ringara. Would you please stand up? And this probably predates me, but you guys did some water projects with their club in Kenya in the past. We do have a few birthdays. I think, yes. Yeah, sure, certainly. Kara, would you like to say a few words?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Dr. Karambu Ringera, past president and current member of the Meru Rotary Club in Meru, Kenya. Thank you all. I know probably some of you don't know, but I'm sure you've done some water projects with us in a very dry part of Meru, so thank you for that support. I'm not going to say much. I'm going to say the one thing that endears me to Rotary is the four-way test of the things I think, I say, and do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? As a Rotarian in Kenya, I want to be the inspiration. And all of us working together as a Rotary family, you inspire me to be the best that I can be in Africa. Thank you.
Okay, Cheryl Sartain's birthday it's today, right? Yeah. And also, it's a short goodbye, but how long will you be gone, Cheryl? 2.5 weeks. Cheryl is going to go and work in a Syrian refugee camp for the next 2.5 weeks. Jay Zing on October 11th.
That's my wife.
Oh, it's your wife? Oh, okay. All right. Sorry. I hope you got her a gift. John Holtzman on the 12th. Mark Garfinkel on the 13th. And Sarah Nelson, one of our millennials, on the 15th. So, a lot of birthdays today. Or this week, anyway. So, Mary Alice, would you like to give us a few words on prime timers?
I would. I want to tell you what has happened with a project we started about 2 years ago with Prime Time. Well, we actually started it in the club when we had a $400 grant to provide loomed infant hats and baby blankets to an orphanage. No, well, not an orphanage. It's a hospital in Bangat. I don't know how to say it. Mark, can you say it? Thank you. I never can say it. Anyway, we did that, and then we added another 100 hats and blankets off of this same grant. With the remaining money, we just went out and bought yarn because we decided after doing the 300 hats for them that we would continue with the hats, and there are not too many of us doing it anymore, but we have reached a goal of 500 hats total, And we are still going. These hats are going to the hospital, the Adventist Hospital in Littleton. And I brought a few because I knew some of you would not have ever seen any. So that's what they look like. They're all different colors. The ones that went to Africa were more brightly colored than these because we figured they didn't have any connection to blue and pink. So anyway, we used brighter colors there. But we've had a good time doing that. And if anybody is interested in helping, we would love to have your help because they have a bigger need here at this hospital than, and I think we're the only ones doing it, and there are about 2 of us doing it right now. So we're trying to keep up with all those babies over there, and it's getting a little more difficult. So if you would like to learn how, or you already know how and would like to make some more, we provide the yarn, and you can help do that. Thanks.
Thanks, Mary Alice. Ann West, how about a word on Meals on Wheels?
Thanks for the request. John Holtzman just filled my last slot for this month, and I will be sending out next month, or in about a week, I will be sending out invitations to people to join us. Jay Weber just shook his head because I also had asked him. If you have a desire to serve, but would like to schedule according to your needs, that's what Meals on Wheels are. We've got, it takes up about half of a Friday morning. I just talked to, where are you, Peterson? And he said, we got it done, and they were done by 11:45. It used to be until 1, so you can tell how quickly they managed to do it.
Thanks, Ann. Mr. Buck, would you like to speak to us, please?
Yes, another food drive. This one's a little different. It's a one-time, for the year anyway, food drive for the Center for American Indians. And this came about because Mike Oldham, who many of you know, he was past district governor, has championed the program, and he's trying to get each club in the area to do one food drive and send it for the American Indian Center. I was hoping we could get somebody to speak to us about it, to tell the good work they're doing, but we may not be able to. For now, put it on your calendars, November 17, that's a Saturday from 9 a.m. to 12 noon at the King Soopers that we usually do. That's at Arapahoe Road and Parker Road, and we'll put out some written things on it in the future, but just want to have you have that in mind, and hopefully we can have a good showing. Thank you.
You're welcome, Tom. And I got to tell you guys, I got this request probably about a month ago, and the method that they use in the other clubs for this food drive is that they get all the members to bring food in. And I don't know, personally, I just get a little bit tired of everybody asking for members to give. And this is a way for the public to give for one of our causes. So every time we do a food drive at King Super, it never fails to amaze me just how generous people are. And this being on the 17th of November, there'll probably be a lot of generous thoughts in people's minds. So I think that we could probably fill up a pickup truck full. So please participate if you can. Mr. Hope, where are you? There you are. Oh, beautiful tie.
Thank you. Yeah, keep everybody awake.
You got an arbitration?
Thanks to Jerry
today?
Garcia. What can I say? Christmas Tree Committee meeting will be next Tuesday after our meeting. I'm happy to report that we are, assuming all our commitments come through, we have reached our goal of 100 trees given to us thanks to Sherry Shelton, Tripp's wife. She managed to get Wilmore to donate 15. They were not a donor last year, and the Highlands Tree value is up from 10 to 20. So if everybody comes through, we have over 100 trees. Thanks to Cottrell Printing, our storage shed is full of empty boxes, which will be used to package the ornaments and lights. So Next week is a very important meeting. We're getting close to our December event, so mark it on your calendar. Next Tuesday, we'll have a committee meeting right after our meeting here.
Thanks, Ken. All right, do we have any other business that I may have neglected? I don't have anything written down, so. Okay. Any travel gifts? Yes, Karen.
So last week I got back from a trip to New York with my girlfriends. I lived in Pennsylvania after college, and these are girlfriends that I worked with when I lived out there over 30 years ago. And we get together for a girls' weekend every summer. And we went to Watkins Glen, which is in the Finger Lakes area of New York. It was really fun. We went to Corning, and we went to the Museum of Glass. And I brought back a hand-blown glass pumpkin. So, hope you enjoyed that.
Mr. Weber?
So last spring we went to see Caitlin in Spain, and met Caitlin last week. We took a trip over to Morocco, and we bought this handmade paintings. I put it in a frame, whatever, the nice cloth handmade painting off the markets in Morocco, which were pretty cool. And then about 2 months ago, I was down in Mexico. I visited a Rotary club over there, and I traded flags with them, and I think it's hilarious because it's a bunch of duct tape with the Rotary thing printed on the front of it, so that's pretty awesome. So
Whatever works.
yeah, whatever works.
Whatever works. Yes, Ken.
We took a little motorhome trip to the Gulf, and let's see what's in my sack here. Let's see, from Baton Rouge, some Creole jambalaya mix. From Memphis, barbecue sauce from Marlowe's. What else? Oh, wait a minute.
Leftover ham sandwich.
I also have a dry. Yeah, I got some pork bones for everybody as well. Dry rub from Marlowe's as well, and from Branson, Missouri, the College of the Ozarks. They require all their students to be involved in some sort of trade, and so we have some stone ground muffin meal mix from the College of the Ozarks in Branson.
All right. So do we have any other travel gifts? No? All right. Well, Mr. Wexler, you have Happy Bucks today. Shocked and amazed. You've never done it? Well, there's always a first time. For every journey in life, it begins with one step, okay?
Okay.
You shill for money.
Well, I got out of bed. That was the first thing I had to do. 10. What are you happy about?
Okay. First of all, I am happy to be here. I know I've missed the last few weeks. I also apologize that I have to leave a couple minutes early. I have a Arapahoe Libraries meeting at 8 a.m., so it's a full morning. First of all, I'm really happy. I am launching my Night Out with the Girls business this week, and it's all about early breast cancer detection and education. It's super important. 1 out of every 7 women get diagnosed with breast cancer in the state of Colorado. So that's a really big deal. So one of my passions is early breast cancer detection, but another passion I have is suicide prevention. So we just wrapped up in September Suicide Prevention Month. My husband, some of you do know and some of you may not know, committed suicide about 2 years ago. And I just want to make sure that people are preventing suicide outside of September. This is a year-long effort, and the tip that I would give everyone in this room is that when you ask somebody, how are you? Don't do it out of habit, don't do it out of obligation, and be ready for the answer. Listen, pay attention, and when something doesn't feel quite right, do something about it, even if that's following up. So I was a little silent during Suicide Prevention Month in September because I believe it needs to happen all year long. That's it.
Hello.
Hey, I have two, so I will need some change. The first one is, of course, it's Tuesday. I'm at Rotary. I mean, what could be better? And the other one is just to tell you what do we call it? The 6 degrees of separation. I got a call from Ken Hope while he was in Memphis, asking me how was my mother after breaking her hip. And I went into panic, and I'm like, crap, I didn't know my mother broke her hip. It must have just happened. Keeping in mind, Ken's mother-in-law lives down the street and can see my mother's house. So I thought, oh my gosh, there must have been an ambulance. She must. So I'm like, I call her up, and she answers in this weak little voice, hello. And I said, how are you? I'm okay. Well, how is your hip? What do you mean, how's my hip? And I said, well, you know, the rumor in the neighborhood is you broke your hip. And she goes, I didn't break my hip. I'm just fine. Why do you think they thought I broke my hip? I said, I have no idea. So anyway, I am assured if anything happens to my mother, I am going to know. Probably within the hour what has happened to her.
I've got 6. 5 are for my son's girlfriend and 4 kids. Last Saturday, he took her out to the airport, and they flew down to Panama City, at a motel on the beach, first floor room, and yesterday they were told, get out, with Hurricane Michael coming. Yep. They were expecting a 17-foot surge, which would have taken out the room. She was able to get out to the airport, rent a car, and she gets home tonight.
There you go.
With the 4 kids. Also, if individuals are interested in seeing some of the most amazing model ships that are handmade, go to the Rocky Mountain Shipwright. Just Google Rocky Mountain Shipwrights. And I believe it's this weekend. They're having a show at one of the libraries in Littleton. I'm a member of the club, and sorry I don't have more information about the show. But this club has probably some of the best model ship makers in the United States. And what they do is phenomenal.
Anybody here? Hello.
Hello.
Howdy. Couldn't agree with you more. So October is National Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So we have started a project at the Sheriff's Office called our Pink Patch Project. So we now have for sale these patches that are pink pins, black hats with pink patches on those hats. And 100% of the proceeds are going to the Littleton Adventist Hospital Breast Care Center, and they're selling them at their gift shop down in Littleton. We've got them at the Sheriff's Office also, and I think we started selling those last month, and I think we've sold $10,000 to $15,000 worth of stuff. These patches are $5, the hats are $10, and we've got a whole bunch of stuff. So 100% of those proceeds go to that. We started this very cool, I think, to keep this at the local level and support our local community with Littleton Adventist Hospital. And absolutely agree with you on the suicide prevention stuff. We've had a bad week and a half. We had actually 2 student suicides at Arapahoe High School. And some of you, I'm sure you know about that, but yeah.
Anybody else here?
On a lighter note, we did manage to survive the humidity down south. Even the natives were complaining. It was 97 degrees. The heat index was 104, so I'm glad to be back in Colorado. And I'll call you from Memphis, and the only thing I can say is my mother-in-law is 93. Sometimes she might get a little confused in terms of the information that goes between her house and 3 houses to your mom's house.
I appreciate the advance notice on it.
Thank you.
I've got one for Cheryl Sartain's birthday. Thank you for the little tickets. That's really exciting. Party favors. Okay, I'm okay with the party favor. And then thank you so much for your business with your little red bug.
I got 5 for our guests. Welcome. Nice seeing you with us. And the rest is because Andres, my son, is starting driving lessons here. So that's probably the last $5 I'm going to ever have.
I have 3 just to help you out, John. So it's your first time. And I'm glad to be here.
Hello. Oh, Doug.
After the Rockies and the Broncos this past weekend, I had a real hard time trying to decide anything to be happy about. But I finally decided I'm just happy to be here this morning.
There you go. All right. Oh, I'm sorry.
Good morning. I was really struck with what Jessica had to say about the suicides, the teen suicides, and I was going to thank her personally in front of you all, and she had to leave. But I was a middle school counselor for 25 years, as most of you know, at Crest Hill Middle School, which is right next door to Highlands Ranch. And as our children become more and more anxious, that's more and more of a concern. So don't ever underestimate your smile, your support, and what you do for others, because it makes a difference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. I think I've been around long enough for you guys to know that I usually try to be very positive, and I'm struggling this morning. I'm dealing with some elder care issues with my mom, who's out of state. And that doesn't sound like a very happy buck, but I got a God wink this morning when I came in and I read the thought of the day. It says, happiness is having a large, loving, caring, close-knit family in another city. Wow. But for me, it's having this large, loving, caring family of Rotary. So I'm just happy to be here surrounded by you guys this morning. So thank you.
Welcome to our guest. Too bad my son-in-law is not here. He goes to Africa frequently. One is for, I'm a breast cancer survivor, and one is for, I lost my youngest brother to suicide a month before 9/11. So we've walked through some of that, and it's not fun. But we had heard last week at our church is right near Arapahoe High School, and we knew about the suicides over there. That is really sad. And happy birthday to my cohort, Cheryl.
Good morning, everyone. I have 2. One is because it's Tuesday, it's Rotary. And the second one is an ask. So as many of you know, I am in a career transition, and I am studying web development, both front end and back end. And so starting this week, I am starting informational interviewing with people that are in the field and in any industry that has anything to do with or needs website development or marketing, which means everybody. So my ask is if you have 10, 15, 20 minutes, I would love to talk to anyone that has any connections to the industry that you're particularly in regards to marketing and website development, just so I can get some ideas of maybe where I want to go in my career, and just kind of figure out what niche that I want to go into. So I'll be sending out an email and a calendar, and you guys can schedule a phone interview with me or a coffee, which I will buy. So I would really appreciate your help as I move through this transition. Thank you.
I got three. This is my busy time of the year, so I'm on the road usually 2 to 3 days a week. So I've missed a couple of Rotaries. So $1 there, $1 because I am here, and having a great opportunity to get back to the club, and then one more because sorry to the guests because I do have to skedaddle on this one. So thank you.
I'm happy because I get to come to your meeting and hear my good friend Mark Garfinkel make a presentation. I would note that I just got back from Meru, Kenya with Dr. Ringera, and that Kenya has embarked on a massive program of inoculating children against polio. And while I was there at the children's home, there were people coming around with the vaccine, with the oral vaccine, and giving it to the children. I have pictures that I'll send to Ken showing the signs that were posted throughout the community advertising the inoculation program. They have a couple of cases there of escaped attenuated virus from the vaccines, but so far nothing, no cases of wild virus, but they're being proactive in doing what they can to prevent that from occurring.
In Kenya, I work with children who have lost their parents to HIV and AIDS. And I work with women living with the virus. And I know to be able to transform those kinds of spaces, it takes good leadership. And right now in my country and in America, leadership doesn't look so hopeful. But in my culture, there is a statement that says, it is easy to break one stick, but when you band 3 or 4 sticks together, it is harder to break them. Together, we create a formidable force for the change that we want to see in the world. And one of those sticks is my vote.
How true.
This is for my new friend Karambu. Thank you for coming today.
Happy to be here on a Tuesday and so happy to have our guests.
Seven. For the 5 birthdays, we just got back from Branson, Missouri ourselves, and I actually bought a travel gift, which was a new thing for me, but I didn't bring it, so that's why I didn't present
Next week.
But except I'm going to be traveling again.
Another gift,
in
that's
a
all.
few weeks I will be back. So, and then the last one is for Mark. I'm looking forward to your presentation. Thank you.
In this otherwise abysmal sporting weekend in which none of my teams won, my grandson came to my rescue, and they were in a tournament, a soccer tournament, and his team won the championship. So praise to Callahan.
I have 5. It's a goodbye. Buck won't be here for a couple weeks. I'm going to Croatia. Tomorrow morning, John's picking me up at my house and taking me to the airport.
Very good. Absolutely.
I have to disagree with Mary Alice. It was not an abysmal weekend. My Colorado Buffaloes are 5-0, so take that.
Well, I'm happy to report that my wife is doing well after her surgery last week, well enough that she can now go to the grocery store. Do you have any idea how many text messages it takes to send your husband to the grocery store? I think it was about 13 or 14 before I got back out the door.
And John, this is a Happy Buck
from your Blue Marble sales team, and a thank you for the example that Cheryl Sertain left today.
But you didn't sell me the Blue Marble.
Any more?
Thank you. Number one, thank you so much to our guests, and you are so eloquent. Thank you for your kind thoughts. Diana, I am with you. Big hug. My son is driving in this weather for the first time with my daughter. All of my children in one basket at the same time. I'm scared. That's number one. Number two, Rachel plays volleyball, and she was asked to jump up to the top team, and she plays a hitter, a center, and she was also a setter. And she had fun, and she was not really concerned. But a woman came to her afterwards saying she's with the Nebraska team, and she would love to know if, and Nebraska's volleyball, if anybody knows, is wicked. She said what her interests were, and Rachel said, well, I'm a sophomore, so it's going to be 2 more years, but I'm excited for her. I'm very excited for her. And yeah, very much so. And last but not least, our financial planning firm was rated number 11 in the country for the fastest growing RIA firms, but we're actually number 1 for being organically grown. We don't buy businesses, we build them ourselves. So I'm just very proud of our firm for that.
I just have one more because I just remembered. Last week I wasn't here because my company had a big conference down in Chihuahua. And part of that conference, one of the speakers was Reggie Rivers. I don't know if you remember who Reggie Rivers is. So for those that doesn't know, he was a running back for the Broncos back in the 1990s. So anyway, I go to the airplane here in Denver, I sit down, and then guess who sits next to me? Reggie Rivers. Fortunately, the middle seat was empty, so we were fine. But we got to talk the whole way because I told him, hey, you're going to a conference with my company. So he stick with us with the group that was going there through Dallas and then on the little airplane. But the happy bug, it's not because of that, but it's because of Dr. Paul. He really remembered and talked very nicely about you, and he remembered Kirk as well. And he said, how is Dr. Paul doing? I said, I see him almost every Tuesday. So he said, hi. And he really remembered you, so kudos.
What a great
I have
story.
to give $2 myself. One, because you caught me by surprise. You really did.
Well, if you read your email.
And two, thank you for coming from Africa to join us.
I have one. First off, thanks to our guests, I'm sorry. Thanks for coming. And it was a little bit longer trip for you than it was for Ralph. So, the second is my wife's recovery is going very, very well. Hopefully another 3 weeks she gets a CT scan and she gets released totally. So that's great. And the third is kind of on an upbeat. Okay, I was channel surfing last night, and I happened upon the Monday Night Football game, and it was in the last quarter or the second quarter, and Drew Brees was coming up on breaking the record for all-time pass yardage, and I saw him throw that touchdown pass, which broke the record, and saw all the kudos from all the players that they played. But, I mean, that was quite an accomplishment for a guy that everybody said was washed up. So, with that, would you like to introduce our guest speaker?
I'd be thrilled. So today we have our own Mark Garfinkel, one of the founding members of our club. And you all know him better than I do. But I've always admired his amazing vocabulary and how he puts things together, his historical view, and today we get to hear, I believe, some history of a family member, but I'll stop there.
Can you hear me? Yeah. All right.
Once upon a time, there was this king, and he hated the Jewish people. So one day, he summoned the leaders of the Jewish community to his palace, and he said, "You are to choose your smartest citizen, your greatest mind, your most gifted scholar, and tomorrow at high noon, I will challenge him to a sign language contest, and if he or she wins, the Jewish people can live in my kingdom forever and ever, but should he or she lose, you must all pack your bags and leave." And so the Jews congregated at the great synagogue, and they debated who would be their champion. "Why not Rabbi Shmuel?" Someone said. "No, Shmuel is losing his memory." "Why not Sam Abramowitz?" "No, he's on book tour in the Ukraine." And while they were debating, Yankel the chicken man walks into the great sanctuary and hears the debate and says, "Why not choose me? My daughter is deaf. I know sign language." But the king will be insulted. He's expecting a great scholar, a genius. But nonetheless, no one else wanted to do it. So Yankel would be the one. And the next day at high noon, the king had a platform built in the middle of town, and there he stood in all his majesty. With flowing robes and a gold crown, he looked like a god. But he was angry because he was expecting a scholar. Instead, standing before him was little Yankel, the chicken man, in his threadbare peasant clothes. But nonetheless, he began the sign language contest and threw his first sign. And Yankel quickly responded. And the king was amazed at Yankel's brilliance. And then he threw his second sign. And Yankel again responded quickly. And the king was flabbergasted. He was staggered, but he knew he had saved his best for last. He reached into his royal robe and produced an old moldy piece of cheese. And Yankel hesitated, stared at the cheese, and slowly brought his hand into his peasant garb and took out a chicken egg. And the king slumped his shoulders in defeat and pronounced Yankel the winner. The crowd went crazy. Later that day, the wise men surrounded the king. They said, "Sire, what did it mean?" And the king said, "Well, I showed him 2 fingers, and I was telling him there are 2 gods, one up there and myself." And Yankel put up 1 finger, and he said, "In his faith, there is only one." And then I showed him an empty hand with outstretched fingers, and I was telling him that his faith is empty and his people are scattered. But he showed me a fist representing strength and unity. And then I showed him an old moldy piece of cheese. I was telling him his faith, his religion is old and antiquated. And he showed me a chicken egg representing freshness and renewal. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, the Jews were going crazy. They broke out the Manischewitz. They were doing the hurrah in the street. And they said, "Yankel, it was beautiful. You're brilliant. What did it mean?" And he said, "Well, the king tried to poke me in the eyes with his finger, so I blocked it. And then he tried to grab me, so I showed him I would protect myself. And then we got tired of fighting, so he took out his lunch and I took out mine." Today I'm going to talk to you about another king of sorts. This king also hated the Jewish people, but unfortunately it would take more than a simple sign language to remedy the problem. This is one of my favorite pictures. I call it The Immigrants. This is my, we've got to put this on. It is on? Okay. Plan B. One of my, this is Greta, my mother-in-law. She is from a small town called Wienings in Germany. My daughter, Bo, she comes from a small town in Chengda, China. The odds of her being the grandmother and granddaughter are billions to one, and I think it's so suiting here that the statue is in the back representing millions of immigrants who have become Americans. One of the great things about our country. This is my other daughter. She is deaf, in fact, but this was not a sign language contest. This was actually a contest put on by the University of Colorado. It was the Anne Frank Literacy Contest, and she won first place. Later that summer, about a month after this occurred, and by the way, the person who awarded her this award was Reggie Rivers. Later that summer, we went to see Anne Frank's museum. I think many of you have. And we also visited, it was a roots finding trip for my mother-in-law. We went to see, and you'll see some of the pictures in her little town that she was from. I will read to you the last paragraph of her biography. This is in first person, as if Anne Frank was talking. Alexa's grandmother was born July 27, 1929. She remembers wearing Jewish stars and going to separate schools. In 1939, when she was 9 years old, she was lucky to come to America by boat. I wrote my diary because I want you to know what happened. I don't want what happened to ever happen to another little girl. If I had lived, Alexa's grandmother and I would be the same age. They were born the same year, only Anne Frank went to Holland, unfortunately, and Greta was fortunate enough to go to New York. In the year 70 CE, there was the first of 3 Roman-Jewish wars. And after each war, Jews were dispersed from the land of Israel. You could see here, of course, the Jews didn't do so well, by the way. These are Roman soldiers looting the great temple. This is a picture of the temple being destroyed. Those of you who have been to Israel know that one of the walls of this temple still exists. We call it the Western Wall, or because of this, they of course call it the Wailing Wall. Jews from that area, they dispersed, or the diaspora occurred, and you can see many of them settled along the Mediterranean basin and also through southern Europe and into the Iberian Peninsula. Jews who settled here were called Sephardic Jews, and they have traits much like the biblical people with curly dark hair, olive skin, and dark eyes. And then later on, between 1100 to 1600 CE, because of inquisitions and crusades, the Jews were again forced to shuffle the deck, and they entered into much of Europe, and that's how we have Jews in Germany. And so the point of this is to show you that the Jews in Germany, they were not immigrants. They were sometimes, some families were there for 25 generations. They were very proud to be Germans. They did not speak Yiddish like Jews in other countries in Europe. They were very proud of their German, and they rose to the top of many professions, in fact, inventing the profession of psychiatry. So now we have Jews in Germany. What happened in World War II? What created the Holocaust? In my studying of the matter, this is my opinion, no one else's, there are 4 reasons why the Holocaust existed. The first thing is called pogroms. Pogroms are government-sanctioned persecution of minorities, especially Jewish people. The Treaty of Versailles put strict penalties on Germany. We'll talk about that in a second. Eugenics, and of course, the person who put it all together was Adolf Hitler. This is a pogrom. This is most of the more infamous pogroms. In Kishinev, 43 Jews were slaughtered, and officials were crowded around this picture as if it was a trophy from a hunt. There were thousands of these going on at the time, so the concept of government-sponsored persecution had already existed. The Treaty of Versailles, the French, to be frank, excuse the pun, they wanted to put strict penalties on Germany for war reparations. They put Germany in a perpetual state of recession and a perpetual state of high unemployment. So now you, in addition to having government-sanctioned persecution of minorities in the area, you also have a downtrodden group who are normally a very proud people, the German people. And then at the early part of the 20th century, eugenics became into vogue. The eugenics, or negative eugenics, is reduced reproduction of people with less desired or undesired traits. You might be wondering where Hitler got the idea for eugenics. And if you are looking, you may be very disappointed to know you don't have to look very far. He got the idea from us. You see, in 1924, the state of Virginia passed the first Eugenics Act, giving the state permission to sterilize people that they considered feeble-minded. And the definition of feeble-minded was very broadly defined. It would then go on to include criminals. It went to the Supreme Court, who did not overturn the law. In fact, Oliver Wendell Holmes, the famous Supreme Court justice, wrote the majority statement on that. 34 states then took on eugenics laws. California sterilized 20,000 people, mostly Mexican Americans. In Alabama, they had a surgery called the Alabama appendectomy. An African-American woman would go to the emergency room for appendicitis and leave with a complete hysterectomy without her knowledge. So these were things going on. Hitler knew about them. Anyway, and then the fourth part of this is Hitler, who took all these other things and put them on steroids. Hitler wrote a book in 1923. He overthrew the German government. He was put in prison for 9 months. He wrote a book called Mein Kampf, and in Mein Kampf, he literally states that people should be judged by how they look. The lighter their skin, the more superior they were. The more blonde they were, the more blue-eyed they were. The less Protestant they were, the less superior they were. He believed that German Aryans were supermen. And the only problem is when you're Superman, you have to be faster than a speeding bullet. You have to be more powerful than a locomotive. You have to be able to leap tall buildings with just your mind. Hitler witnessed all these things happening, whether it be the Munich Olympics or the Max Schmeling getting knocked out by Joe Louis, but the Pharaoh's knees do not bend at this point. So my mother-in-law, she was born in 1929. Her parents were Robert and Betty Hess. We called her Oma. And Robert was in the cattle business. They had 2 children, my mother-in-law Greta and Werner, who was the brother. This is Greta here. This is her first cousin. These are the only 2 Jewish children in this class picture. Those of you who are in banking, those of you who are in finance or investing might know this little boy, her first cousin, Henry Kaufman. He is a world-famous economist who worked for Salomon Brothers, and we were talking about polio earlier. He did get polio. Upon this time, about 1934, she was 5 years old, Hitler now became the Fuhrer. The coalition government was ruled by President Hindenburg, who died in that year. So then Hitler had full powers at this point, and he at this point forbade Jewish children from attending public schools. So she was forced to go to Bad Nauheim. A Jewish owner of this building no longer can do business anymore. He wasn't permitted to have a business, so he opened it up to a boarding school and didn't charge for this. And this was about 7 miles away. So at the age of 5, she was forced to leave her parents, only to come home occasionally for a holiday or two. It must have been a very scary time for her. So I'm going to set this up for you. I'm about to read an excerpt from the memoirs I helped her write. What happened is that they were in their home. They had visitors. Their Aunt Emmy and Uncle Fritz and Gerd were visiting them. They get a knock on the door. It's one of their Christian neighbors who had to come to their house unseen because it was against the law for Christians and Jews to be friends, to come together. And so she knocked on the back door and they let her in, and she said, "You must leave tonight. There are plans that involve hurting Jewish people. You must pack up a bag, you must take some food, and you must leave." And their only way of leaving the country would be to go to Aunt Emmy's home, and in the attic, this is not an actual picture, this is called a mansard. It's a little attic in the top of these homes, and there's a little bedroom, and under the bed was a trunk, and in the trunk were the sponsorship papers. They could not leave the country unless they were sponsored by someone in the United States. They had to somehow get to Aunt Emmy's to get these papers in order to leave. So they bundled up. They had a small luggage. They started walking the streets. SS officers were all over the place. Dogs were barking. It was a very harrowing experience. They tried to go to a Jewish home, but it was guarded by a Nazi soldier who was walking with jackbooted steps across the threshold. And then this happened several times, and finally they decided they had to go to a train station to get out of public view. The men would leave and then come back to scout the area to see how things were going. And here we are. They were staying in the station. Uncle Fritz had returned and spoke with wife Tante Emmy and told her it was no use. Every Jewish house was guarded, and they will have to stay in the train station at night. Greta is upset telling me about this story at this point. The men would continue to leave and study the situation until Uncle Fritz does not return. Where is Uncle Fritz, she thought. Everyone is upset. Gerd goes out to search for him, and he also doesn't come back. They were all beside themselves. Now Robert, her father, goes out and also doesn't come back right away, but then comes back taking longer than expected and sticks his head into the door of the waiting room. And Oma speaks to him at the door. He put his finger to his lips to keep her from talking and whispers to her. The streets are full of SS, all looking for Jews and asking everyone for identification. He has seen Fritz and Gerd being stopped by the SS and loaded onto a flatbed truck with other Jewish men. Robert had seen an SS officer starting to walk up to him. But before he approached, Robert walked over to the officer, said, "Buddy, do you have a cigarette?" Then he asked the SS guy for a match. The SS officer, who had a cigarette in his mouth, leaned forward and allowed Robert to light the cigarette. Robert said, "Danke," and walked away calmly and quietly, smoking his cigarette. He was never asked for identification. Robert turned returned to the train station and told Alma all of this. He told Alma that synagogues in the area were being aflame. They had thrown out all Torahs and religious books and created a barn fire with them in the streets. He advised her that they would stay for the night at the train station. They discussed what would they tell Aunt Emmy about what happened to Fritz and Gerd, and they decided to make up a story. But Emmy did not believe it, and she began to get hysterical. They tried to quiet her, to keep her from bringing attention to them. I want to go out, I want to go out, I want to look for them. The SS had been looking into the station, so it was particularly scary to have an upset woman with them. Their plan was to go to Tante Emmy's house at dawn. Before dawn, when it was still dark, they headed there unseen. Tante Emmy had refused to leave. We've got to go, Emmy. We've got to go. We can't stay, Robert said. Tante Emmy had difficulty walking and was assisted by Oma and Robert. Her knees kept on buckling while she was wailing despondently, "My husband, my son." They saw the smoke and fire of burning buildings. They saw the smoke and fire of burning buildings surrounding them. Tante Emmy's house was on the corner. Robert sneaked to the front and saw it was guarded by SS. They managed to enter the house from behind. The SS had destroyed much of the house, and this included setting the staircase on fire, with only barely enough of it surviving to be used. Dawn arrived and the SS officer had disappeared. As they inspected the house, not a stick of furniture was whole. Much of it had become firewood. Oma suddenly said, "Our papers." They climbed the stairs quickly to the attic. Miraculously, the little room was totally intact, and the papers were there. Uncle Fritz and Gerd were taken to concentration camps. They were later released when sponsorship papers were produced. This was about the time of Kristallnacht. I think it was maybe a day or two before the actual event of Kristallnacht, which occurred in November of 1938. During this time, 20,000 Jews were taken to concentration camps. Synagogues were burned, thousands of synagogues were burned, and tens of thousands of Jewish businesses were destroyed. They made their way to a port and bought passage on the SS Hamburg. They made themselves their way to New York, where they had cousins who had a apartment set up for them, which was kind of nice. They had bought a Leica camera. You could not leave with cash. You had to buy stuff with the hope of selling it later on. And the Leica cameras were very valuable, and that was one of the things that they had for money back then. So we went in 2000, we got a tour of the city. Now, Henry Kaufman, the famous economist, also returned. They wanted to have a parade for him, and he declined that. He just wanted a quiet tour. Greta here is showing us where she lived, the exact home where they had the neighbor had knocked on the back of her door. John Barry, how would you like to have this in Madagascar? That's my nephew, Alden, who also went with us. And what's really cool about this was that as we went through, word got out who Greta was. And some of her classmates met her on the street, and this is the old schoolhouse. I showed you a picture of the class picture. This was the same schoolhouse. And these are classmates of hers that met her. And they decided to have a reunion at a German pizza place. And I sat there at the head of the table. I didn't understand a word of what they were saying Greta spoke beautiful German at the time, and it was just a wonderful time. One of the edicts that Germany had after World War II was that they decided they would repair all the Jewish cemeteries. They were badly damaged, and they put a great deal of money into fixing up the cemeteries, which I am the genealogist of that family, so it was I certainly appreciated this. So, I bring you back to this picture. Well, according to my mother-in-law, she told me that these were actually cakes that looked like pretzels, but I have a hard time, being a baker myself, I have a hard time, it must have been a very stale cake. It must have been a cake that you need to go to the dentist for. But anyway, when I look at a picture like that, I don't know what it's like to not be Jewish and not have family members in this picture. Here's two children with this ominous symbol, portentous symbol in the background. And it made me think, I was standing exactly where my grandmother had stood at 9 years old in the middle of this town. And although we were treated beautifully and people were extremely generous and caring, I thought about what if it was 7 years earlier and I was standing there and I would have been arrested, I would have been brought to a concentration camp and probably perished. So it's kind of harrowing. So I promised my wife that I would not leave it depressing. So I'll tell you a joke and then you can ask me whatever questions you want. Two Jews are in a bar and one of them says, "You look familiar." And the other one said, "Now that you think of it, you look familiar." And the other guy goes, "Chicago." Yes, Chicago, 92nd Street. Oh my God. George Washington High School. Oh my God. Someone else walks into the bar. They said to the bartender, "What's new?" And he said, "The Epstein twins are drunk again." I have, not many things survived back then. I have an old book that came from that era that survived the Holocaust, and you're welcome to take a look at it if you'd like when we're done. Okay, any questions?
How did they get from, how did they get into wherever that ship left? Because they would have, was that strictly by train? What countries did they go through?
I believe they took a train, and I think the port was Bremen that they left from. Yeah, they had to leave from Germany, and unfortunately she's passed away in March, and there were so many more things, but her memory was going, and it was so difficult to get anything out of her at that point. I had 6 interviews with her when she was at Shalom Park, and it was difficult. So, any other questions? Yes?
Can you explain how difficult it was for American sponsors to sponsor a Jew trying to get out of Germany?
Well, I don't know the exact process. They had letters that the sponsor had to write that there was they would have income. In other words, they secured a job for them. They secured a shelter for them. I don't know much more than that. I think that's a good thing to research.
I think the sponsors had to post a $5,000 bond with the U.S. government. And in today's dollars, that would probably be $60,000 or $70,000 or $80,000 bond for each person they were sponsoring, which made it virtually impossible.
Yeah. Any more questions? Roxy.
Are those eugenics laws still in books?
I should tell you that it's never been overturned. The Supreme Court ruling in 1924 still exists. So technically speaking, states can still do that without the knowledge. It's mind-boggling to know that that occurred in this country. Yes, Sanjay.
It's probably going to be a loaded question, but how concerned or are you concerned by the current rise of the extreme right in Europe again, like Giuseppe Conte in Italy, who, I was just listening this morning, which is very appropriate to your talk, about the concerns of fascism returning to Italy and other countries not doing anything about it.
Well, I showed you the 4 slides, the 4 factors I think led up to the Holocaust. I'm no historical scholar. But if the economy goes bad, people are going to need a scapegoat. Now, whether it be Jews or Muslims, because now, see, there were no Muslims back then. Jews and gypsies were it. Homosexuals were it. You know what I'm saying? There weren't too many other people to choose from. I'm very concerned. I think it can happen again. Yes?
Couple of comments, and thank you very much for the good talk. There is a Supreme Court decision against, I believe, state of Oklahoma, where they were sterilizing prisoners. And that law was overturned because you were depriving the individual of life, liberty, and happiness. So I think that would carry back to eugenics laws.
That was the argument. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness was the argument against eugenic acts back then. Oliver Wendell Holmes and 4 others at least, didn't think that having a feeble mind, in their opinion, if you have a feeble mind, you aren't smart enough to know whether or not you want to be sterilized.
Right.
So that's kind of the argument. It doesn't make sense. We had quite a few famous eugenicists. Charles Lindbergh, who flew across the Atlantic, he was invited to Hitler several times. He met with him. The author of Tarzan. If you think of what is Tarzan, think about what it is. It's a white baby who survives a plane crash, and somehow he's raised by apes, and all of a sudden he's the king of the jungle. And he can solve all the problems all these other people who happen to have dark skin were having trouble with. Think about how that works sometimes. Any other questions? No?
Well, Mark, thank you so much. Okay, now don't go away. We have a job for you. Right. I want you to do this first, then.
We need to step back so the camera can catch this award-winning drawing.
Hey, 865. Check my.
Check mine.
You got it. All right.
All right. What do you think?
I think you got a good chance.
Yeah, that's bad.
I'm a lucky charm,
Clear. And clear again. Thank you.
All right, Mark, now I know you don't know anything about this, but, we contribute books to a small library in North Denver, and in each new book will be a booklet, and this is a facsimile of what's going to be in there. And
thank you so much. What a wonderful idea.
Okay, everybody, just a reminder, tomorrow is our board meeting. It's at Cottrell Printing. Everybody is welcome. 7 o'clock. And what's that? Tomorrow's second Wednesday.
Supreme Court decision out of Rotary.
Please join me in all the things we think, say, and do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Have a great day, everybody.